Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Xtreme Memories. And I tell you, this has been quite a ride. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're almost 1 year this show's been on. This is crazy. So it's just such a great trip down memory lane. Speaking of memory lane, my guest from day one and even before that, we're going to talk about that. My guest today on Xtreme Memories, brought to you by the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Wrestling Chatter. Subscribe, hit the bell notification button, and share this video and channel. The more subscribers we get to the Wrestling Chatter, the more great content we can bring at you. And this time on Xtreme Memories, no exception. Again, Xtreme Memories on the 15th and the 30th of every month. My guest today, without further ado, Carlito Montana, otherwise known as Carlos Hombre de Oro. We're going to talk about that as well. Prior to XPW. Oh my goodness. His identity has been revealed now after all these years. Yes, Carlito Montana was Hombre de Oro in Slammers.
Now the Slammer, those 10 fans finally know what I look like.
Yeah, they got to treat those 10 fans. But no, Carlito, welcome to Xtreme Memories. My friend, we haven't seen each other in quite some time, but you know, we go back because we knew each other a little bit before XPW, you know, Slammers, all the stuff going on. Now, you're going to have to refresh my memory. I mean, I was a part of SCCW with Dynamite D, Patrick Hernandez, the late, great Dynamite D, Kevin Kleinrock and all that. But I believe I want to say that you kind of stuck with Slammers when SCCW formed, and you.
Yeah, it's funny, and if you allow me, I'll get a little into it.
Okay, but I want to actually, you know what? I kind of jumped ahead there. Right before we do that, I want to first off welcome you, man. It's great seeing you again, dude.
It's awesome to see you.
You were in the very beginning of XPW, and you were. I want to just say this right off the bat. You were a very respected guy in the locker room. All the other workers, I remember they all held you in high regard. Whether it was Lester, Billy the Messiah, Chaos. From all of us, Dynamite D, you know, you had your hand in training a lot of guys that became stars in XPW and beyond. So I just want to get that out of the way to give the fans an idea that do remember you or may not remember you, because you were there in the infancy. You were there in the infancy of television, but you didn't hang on at the end of XPW. We'll get into all that. But before we get into all that, Carlos, tell the fans out there, how did you first get into professional wrestling?
Watching or doing it?
Both, watching then doing. And a good friend of ours, Danny Ramirez, said that you guys used to, if this is true or not, you guys actually used to work at Target together and body slam the Christmas trees together, and that's how you guys met.
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay, all right.
But, the first time I watched wrestling, I think I was maybe 5 years old, and I hated watching it because it was lucha libre, but there was this lucha libre in the 70s, and there was a guy hitting another guy with a wooden chair, and the guy was bleeding, and I'm like, he hurt him. It's like, I don't want to see that. It was like, that was too violent for me. But years later, I was kind of just channel surfing. Now, this has got to be 1983 or so, and it was one of those TVs where you had to change it with the handle. There's no remote. You were the remote, right? I was clicking, just kind of giving each channel a second, and I clicked on a channel, and there was a guy ranting and raging, and then he said. He used a derogatory term for Mexicans. And I'm half Mexican. I was just like, what? Who's this animal? And it was the beginning of the Don Morocco, Jimmy Snuka feud. Oh. And it was, I was hooked. From then on, I was hooked, and I would watch anything WWF, but that wasn't the only thing I watched. As years progressed, I got into Pro Wrestling Illustrated, so I found out about Ric Flair and the Road Warriors, and obviously Hulk Hogan was the big, the big guy there, and I got into the UWF, which I loved the UWF. I don't think I ever got too into Lucha Libre. The only reference I had with Lucha Libre was El Santo. That was El Mascarado de Plata. That was the original masked man from Mexico, iconic, and Mil Máscaras, because they were in movies. And it was really cool. It was just like, I was a kid, so dude, I was watching the Battle of the Gargantos on Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. So anything monsters, I was like, oh, the masked wrestler is going to wrestle the Wolfman. It's corny now, but it was for a kid. It was awesome.
Who's gonna win this one? Oh my gosh!
Oh, I like the Wolfman, but I don't know.
I mean, we would talk about these things as if they were real. Like we're talking about a real sport. It's great. It was. I remember, just to interject, I remember the Incredible Hulk, Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby and all that, the TV show. And I remember when the episode came on, there was an evil Hulk versus Lou Ferrigno. And this guy was taller and all this, and I forget the actor, but it was a real thing. Like, oh, who's going to win, the good Hulk or the bad Hulk? And I just remember waiting a week. Like, that was just the most important thing in the world.
Yeah. I love that show, and I didn't realize it at the time, but then there was Bigfoot versus the $6 million man.
Andre.
And it was I didn't know it was Andre. I was like,
I didn't know either back then.
He scared me. I'm like, oh my God. His eyes, did you see his eyes?
Well, Bill Bixby, and I mean, watching that later on, I really, really got to appreciate more now Bill Bixby as David Banner. Like, I think
he was great.
Phenomenal actor, man. But anyway, digressing here, but going on to you getting into not necessarily Lucha Libre, but watching these movies, you're saying.
Well, I watched the movies as a smaller kid, but didn't get into wrestling, like I said, until the Morocco Snuka feud, and it was just legendary. And I'll tell you this happened shortly thereafter, because I was super into wrestling when this happened, when the 2020 expose happened with John Stossel. Yeah. And I was a kid. I was like 12, 13 years old. So when this came out and he's like exposing it was like a kick to the stomach. Like seeing that, but I still you hung out. But something happened that would later, I would guess, inform my wrestling as far as how I performed. Was after that, if you're a wrestling fan, you got so much shit, because if you said, "Oh, I like wrestling," the response from everybody was, "Oh, you like that fake shit?"
Right.
So. When I started wrestling, I wanted to do my best to convince people. No, we're doing something legitimate here.
Yeah, you were one of those guys that when you got in the ring, you knew how to be stiff in a working environment. And again, that's what maybe some fans don't know about your work. And again, you were not just because you were stiff, you didn't take liberties, but you made the fans believe, and you were a consummate professional. But like I said, you were one of those guys that you could just tell walking through that locker room, like everyone just had respect for you, no matter if you were.
That's really nice to hear.
Yeah, no matter if you were low on the card, middle on the card, or on the card in the back, you were up here. And look, we've had a lot of guests. Like I said, we've been on now Xtreme Memories for almost a year now, and throughout these episodes, especially these guys from out here that came from SCCW, UIWA, EWF, Slammers, of course, the root of it all. Your name gets brought up a lot, so glad to have you on. And
that's really nice to hear. That's really nice.
Well, it's true. You look back at the episodes, not just me saying this.
going forward, how did I get into
breaking into the business? Yeah.
I was working at Target.
Yep.
And I knew Oscar, who later was the Samoan Kid and Pancho Killer.
Pancho Killer.
And he was in the magazine aisle. We were both working at Target at the time. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And he was with somebody. And Oscar's like, hey, what's up? And the other guy's like, kind of just looked over and was like, and didn't even say a word. I was like, okay. And I was like looking for the magazine, and I go, hey guys, you guys know if do we have Pro Wrestling Illustrated? The other guy was Patrick Hernandez, and he launches in this big promo, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. You mean the #1 mag? You know, he knew it, and it was like I said. So after '84. You really didn't announce you were a wrestling fan, but you were, and you were like, you know, I'm going to be a fan no matter what. But when you found another wrestling fan, you're like, brother, you know what I mean? And so Patrick doing that, I was like, hey, I can talk to you. You know, it was really cool. So we're chatting, and Patrick and Oscar are the ones that told me about Slammers. And I guess somehow Oscar had found the place, had found Slammers. And he told me where it was. It was on Brantford, this very industrial part of town in Sunderland. And he goes, you know, we should split it and do a private together with the owner. And I'm like, okay, where is it? And I couldn't wait. I went by myself and I knocked on the door, you know, big steel door. It opens, kind of cracks open. Vern sticks out his head. He's like, yes. And I'm like, you know, Oscar sent me. He said that, oh, Oscar, come on in. And I went in, and you know, I think I've heard you describe the place, and it was that. It was like you walk into the office, and there was like a million pictures of wrestlers, and you didn't know where to direct your eyes. It was, you know, it's like trying to recognize wrestlers. And there were a couple guys there. One was movie star Mike, Malicious Mike, and this other kid. And I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. And we chatted a little bit. So then Vern took me into the main, you know, gym, and that you see the ring, and it's, you know, it's like the most glorious thing you ever saw. It was just like, oh my God, it's like surreal. It's like literally walking and seeing like a monument or something.
Right. It's
here.
It's no explanation needed. It's crazy. Yeah, it's unbelievable how
you saw the cases with, like, you know, Gorgeous George's robes and things like that, and Count Billy Vargas stuff, and you know, all these old time wrestlers that I didn't know at the time, but I knew it was, oh man, this is a place, you know.
Yeah.
So they started putting on a match for me, Mike and the other guy and Vern, and I was just like, this is awesome. This is really cool.
Was it Jeff Lindbergh?
No. In fact, it was funny because I signed up for a private with Vern. We did a match. Right off the bat, I got a little, you know, I don't know what the word is, creative, and I got to the second rope and I dropped an elbow, and Vern told me, I wanted to see what you were going to do, and if you hurt me, I was going to tell you, don't do that again, but you knew what to do, just instinctively. I'm like, well, yeah, I watched wrestling for some years. And he said, I got a couple of guys that are, you know, your size and your age, and I want you to come in and work out with them. And I'm like, yeah. And those two guys were Darren and Jeff Lindbergh, the young lion, and Dynamite D. And it was really cool. You know, I think the first time I met Darren, he was like, Jeff was like 15. And he was like,
he was young
kid, very like, he's like, hey dude, you know, he's all super like, yeah, it's gonna be awesome, man. And Darren was a little standoffish. I don't know, but you know, we got to know each other, and I think even before I met them, Vern had me show up. I didn't know what for. He had me put on some tights, and he wanted me to wrestle Jeff, and that's the first person I met was Jeff, as far as other wrestlers, and he had a photographer there. And we're doing stuff, and she's taking pictures, and I didn't know what it was for. But I have to say, I'm I was raised very conservative as far as, not exposing your body. You wore shorts down to your knees, that kind of thing. It's like, well, that's too revealing. And here I am wrestling in Speedos, and I wasn't like, I was whatever, but I didn't want to tell anybody. And I don't know, a couple of weeks later, maybe a month later, I'm at working at Target, and somebody walks up to me and goes, "Hey, you're a wrestler?" And I'm like, "What?" And it was in a magazine, a wrestling magazine. I was mortified. I was like, he goes, "Dude, why didn't you say anything?" I'm like, it was embarrassing.
Wow. So,
but Vern got, and I was like 19.
So you were in a wrestling magazine presented as a professional wrestler, and that was
just started.
Just started your tryout. Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't like it. And the sad thing is, I wish I could get my hands on that magazine now, because it's like so many years, 30 years after the fact. And I'm like, oh, I wish I would have gotten how cool that was then. But I was, it was foolish pride.
Right. So now you found your way into Slammers, and now what year was this?
1990.
This is 90. Okay, this is pretty early on. And
so I started wrestling with Jeff and the young lion, Jeff Lindbergh, and Darren, Dynamite D. And at that time, we were just kind of training ourselves. We kind of knew the breakdown. And Mike, also movie star Mike, or Malicious Mike. He was known as Malicious Mike.
Mike, right.
Now, there was like a core guys. There's some core guys there. And that was Darren, Jeff, Mike, me.
Yep.
Later on, El Toro Bravo and Ed Ferrara.
Right.
Well, that was later on. This is early.
When did Slammers first begin? Open its
well, soon thereafter, he had an anniversary show. So it was really cool, because there were people like some of the guys that I mentioned. Count Billy Varga was there, the Fabulous Moolah, Gene LaBelle. They were at there were a bunch of other like old timers, and they were May Young. They were at this wrestling anniversary for the 1 year anniversary for Slammers, or whatever it was, 2 years maybe, I don't know. And we were, all of us, I'm talking about me, Jeff, and Darren, we were more wrestling fans of like the guys then. So there was nobody that we knew, so we didn't get, this is cool. We were just, we're gonna do a match, and it was Jeff versus Darren, and I wrestled movie star Mike, or Malicious. He was Malicious Mike. I keep calling him movie star, but that was later on. He was Malicious Mike, and Mike doesn't remember, but the end of our match was Vern hit me with a chair, and then Mike pinned me.
Wow. And
these old timers going up, and hey, you were pretty good, kid. And again, I was like, hey, whatever, and I'm like, oh man, that was Count Billy Varga. Why didn't I, it was lost on me.
Right.
But what happened then, I stopped going to Slammers for some reason, and I don't remember why. But it was I don't know, 6 months, 7 months, something like that. Oh, before I forget it, at the anniversary show, and because I called Jeff. I'm like, hey, there were some people there, and I don't remember who they were. And there was a guy named Vandal Drummond, and he was wrestling somebody, and I forget who it was. And the reason I bring this up, because he kept chopping him. And the other guy was a really green guy, he was totally green. So Vandal Drummond, I believe his name is Kurt Brown, and I guess he's a local kind of really known guy. He's wrestled in Mexico, and he had the lucha style kind of thing. But he was chopping the other guy, but not just like a flare chopper, Rodney. But it was he's chopping him in the arms, he's chopping him in the chest, he's chopping him in the thighs. And every time he chopped this guy that was really green, you just hear him go, "Ow." Ow. And it wasn't like he was selling it. He was like, "Ow." It was one of the funniest things. I'm like, God damn, he's chopping everywhere, man. It was hilarious. Bill Judd wrestled, I think, on that show. And I left 7 months or 8 months, and I came back. Vern called me. He said, "Come back! What are you doing? This is we're doing stuff, and you're going to enjoy it." And I came back, and that time that I was gone, Vern had some really, really talented people. Sam Houston, Terry Funk, the Fabulous Moolah, train Darren and Mike Smith and Jeff Lindbergh, and they worked with those guys like a lot. And all of a sudden, when I came back, they had a curriculum, and it was really cool because they were taught by those people. And I would say, and looking back at some of the people that I mentioned, I would say out of the group of us, I would say Darren was the more technical. Like, if you wanted to break down something, Darren was the guy that would go, okay, here's where you put your hand, here's where you blah, blah, blah. I would say Jeff Lindbergh, in my opinion, I've talked to him about this, he had the most potential. This is the 90s, early 90s. Young, blonde kid. If he got into like serious training, like serious putting up on muscle, we all should have, but him in particular, he was like, he was a great size. I think he could have found his way to Mexico. I think he would have found his way, down south, and I'm talking east south.
Right.
I think he would have found his way into the WWF. I would say Malicious Mike was the most natural.
Okay.
He could. It came easy to him. He was just smooth with stuff, and it's like I didn't appreciate it then. I thought he was good then, but looking back, I'm like, oh, he was just kind of. In fact, Fabulous Moolah, invited him to go train with her back at her school because she thought he'd be a great addition to her school. That's how impressed she was with him, with Mike Smith. Wow. El Toro Bravo, Edgar, he had timing. He had impeccable timing. He just knew when to slow down, when to pick it up, when to make things mean something. Ed Ferrara, he knew the psychology. I think great exception when people I think it's ridiculous that some of the talking heads that are always on YouTube are shitting on Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara. They're the guys that brought wrestling down. Oh yeah. So there wasn't Frankenstein over at the Lawler Federation. I remember Frankenstein coming out. Oh, yeah. RoboCop did show up at WCW with a fucking angle pulling out a cord. Come on, it's like I think the cat was out of the bag. The scaffold match. People talk about the scaffold match with the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express. I was excited to see that match, and I remember finding a videotape and then plugging it in, and it looked like 4 guys that were afraid of the heights. And I was just like, I think that happened years before those guys ever did anything. But anyways, back to Ed. Ed was super smart, really knew how to, the psychology of it. And man, I cherish those rides to Bakersfield because he would break down Larry Zbyszko and who was he feuding with in the 80s? Italian wrestler from Bruno Sammartino. Thank you. Yeah. And I was like, oh wow. And it was like the story. But he's a writer. He's a really smart writer. So yeah. This is before he wrote for WWF and WCW.
Right. So do you remember? Were you in Slammers all the way up until you went into XPW, or were you doing things on the indie scene in between time?
No. Okay. So what happened with Slammers, and the DWO, if you don't mind me talking about.
Yeah. No, that's great.
And I say this without judgment. Vern Langdon is gone.
Right.
Darren McMillan is gone, and I miss them both. I love them both. It was like a family.
Yeah.
But for years, I think Darren was being kind of groomed to be the trainer, and he kind of would say it, and because I would say, hey man, this is early on. I would say, hey dude, don't you get out of here and go wrestle like in Mexico or something? And he would say, no, I'm being trained to be a trainer. I'm here to be a trainer. So he had his head kind of in basically what was happening. I think there was a conversation that I wasn't privy of that Vern said, you're here to be the trainer and that's it. I don't know. This is just my guess. So basically what happened, they fell out, Vern and Darren. And I think, and this is a lot of conjecture, this is just me filling in the blanks. Darren had been, what happened was we almost closed, Slammers almost closed. And Darren, like Vern's like, we're losing money. My accountant is like yelling at me, I can't keep this place open. And we were going to close. And I think Darren and Jeff volunteered to pay for a space, but the idea was they were going to take over, I think. And Vern, that recharged Vern's batteries. And I think they thought they were just going to take over Slammers, and Vern was kind of let them do it. But, it was Vern, the way Vern saw it, I think it was Vern's project, and he wasn't going to let that go. Shortly thereafter, Vern got us, and I have to say this next part. So he got us working over at Strongbow in Bakersfield, Strongbow Studio. And why was that important? And why was Slammers important as far as us as wrestlers? It was a double-edged sword because we were working every week before we even went to Strongbow. So when we had Strongbow, no matter, come hell or high water, we were going to wrestle Thursday. We had Grunt Group on Sunday, and then we were going to wrestle every week. So we were traveling over there. And as I think, you've done improv, and the only way you improve or sharpen those tools is to work it. You have to work it. We didn't see it that way back then. We were kids, and we're like, really? Again? Halloween? We're gonna do a show on Halloween? Nobody's gonna be there on Halloween. Thanksgiving. Truth be told, I didn't care about Thanksgiving because I didn't want to spend time with my family. But that's me. But unfortunately, Darren and Vern got in an argument, and look, like I said, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody. They're both gone. But you didn't win arguments.
Talking about what happened
with Vern.
Huh?
You did not win arguments with Vern.
Yeah, and you're not talking bad. You're just explaining what went down, what happened. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So it was really kind of sad to see because here's one of the guys, the main guys, that was one of the trainers, and now he's not even training people. And you're, and it's almost like your brother, but you don't want. It's the kind of relationship with Vern you can't say anything about it. You know what I mean? And I was a dumb kid. I didn't know what to say, but I felt bad for Darren. And so that was what started off that whole separation, if you would. But before I go on to that, I have to tell you, I remember the first time I saw you at a show. Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, you were there with two other kids. One of the other kids was a very awkward, Jack Skeleton-looking Kevin Kleinrock. And why did I know this? For two reasons. This is when we had a skeleton crew of wrestlers. It was only a few of us, and I was wrestling Darren. I was Hombre de Oro. And you were heckling us. You were heckling me. And Vern had a very strict rule. Faces are faces, heels are heels. Faces, you don't talk back to the audience. That's right. And you were like letting me have it. I don't remember. I was just, if you could, like, I had a mask on, and if you could see my face, it was red. That son of a bitch. But Darren, being the pro that he was, he walks over to you, and I don't know what he said, but you, your reaction was like, I'm backing you up. I'm trying, and then, but he did his job because then you started cheering me to like boo him, which is hilarious.
Okay, right.
And the reason I knew that because Vern filmed every show So, it's like, dude, there was only like 4 people in the audience that day. So we saw the whole thing. And then there's Kevin, who I love Kevin, but it was funny because he was like, moving around. And we're like, what's wrong with that guy?
Oh, man.
That's when I remember. And I'll tell you something else that I think it's hilarious. I was thinking about all these memories that were just coming back. There was a guy, and I think you might have met him, but this is who you replaced when you became an announcer for Slammers. I believe it was Greg Holzer.
Oh yeah, that name rings a bell. Yeah.
He was a heavy dude. Oh my God. He was for years and years and years. He was always coming here, and he would just throw out stuff, and it was kind of funny. He was kind of funny.
He was Glitzy Greg later on, right?
He became Glitzy Greg. Now here's what you and him share. You were great at heckling, and so was he. But at different points, he was first. He came before you. Vern, I guess, went up to him and you. I don't know. You'll have to tell me the story. But he went up to him and he said, "Hey, how would you like to be an announcer?" And he did it. And you did the same thing. And the reason why this stuck and makes me smile, I remember both of you, when you were heckling, oh my God, you were relaxed and cracking jokes.
Right.
And then it was your first time to announce, and both you and him were like,
oh yeah.
And I'm like, what happened to this guy? What happened to that guy?
Right.
It was hilarious. When did Vern ask you to be an announcer?
And that was a wake up moment to be okay. It's a different story being on this side of the curtain or on that side of the curtain, and also it was kind of like there was a lot of pressure because we are now on this side inside part of the curtain. It's like to me it was an honor, and I don't want to mess this up. It was cool. I remember that event, man. I remember that, and it was good memories, man. But now, so this was before. Okay, talk about.
Let me say one more thing, and I apologize. Please. I do want to. There's so many guys that wrestled for Slammers that came and went. Guys like Tyrone Tiny Little, Jesse, El Diablo Valdez, Bear. The list goes on and on. Beautiful Bruce Bodine, Ed Ferrara. And again, like they talk smack about Ed, but like I had so many rough matches with Ed where there was points where you always rode up with somebody when you went to Bakersfield. And when I rode with Oscar, the Samoan Kid, I rode with Darren, I rode with my friend Tone Rodriguez, Big Tone. He's a great, beautiful, beautiful artist. I remember riding with Ed a lot, and Ed was great. Me, Ed, and Tone, and we'd have some stiff matches, and then we're saying goodbye at the end, and Ed's like, "All right, brother, take care. All right, hey, take care. Love you. Be safe." And he's sitting in the car, and I'm already in the passenger seat. And I'm like holding my jaw because he cracked me, and I couldn't close my jaw all the way. I'm like doing this.
Oh,
and I go, and I'm sore, and I'm like, "Hey, Ed," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm really hurt, bro." And he's like, "Yeah, me too." It's hilarious. And then there are guys like Dave Geck, who is El Espirito, and he was also the referee. And Tone did I wish I don't know what happened to it, but Tone Rodriguez did this drawing of all of us. And he had because Dave Geck was also the referee, and I forget the name of the referee or what his name was as a referee, but he was El Espirito, the spirit, as a masked wrestler. And Tone drew them together, so they're both looking at each other like, it's like, who are you? It was wonderful. And Dave was awesome because I forget who he was calling, but he was calling some place where he was giving the results of the Slammer matches, which I think were really cool. Like even then I thought, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Thank God he's doing that and knows who to call. And they were so good. Webb came out of there. He was great.
Messiah Billy was there.
I remember when Billy started, he had natural athleticism, and I knew he'd be good. You
talked a little bit about Dynamite D, but are there any cool memories that you could share with some of the fans with you and him, other than what you've already mentioned?
Me and Darren and I, my main two trainers was Darren and Mike. I hold them in deep affection. Like I said, Darren was the technical guy. He could break things down. And I had a lot of great matches with him. A lot of great matches.
Oh, yeah.
And some of my favorite memories, believe it or not, were after training. When I came back, I took like an 8-month hiatus. When I came back, Darren and Mike were the main trainers. And they had a curriculum that you had to go through to be a graduate. And I started going. The plan was, and it was just kind of told to me, and I was going to be a teacher's aide to both of them. So here's how my Sundays would work out sometimes. I'd show up in the morning for grunt group. That was about 2 hours or so, 2 hours and a half. Then I have to stay and work with one or the other, and sometimes both. And they would have a private with a student, guys like Ashley Hudson, Apollo, guys like that. So I'd basically be the dummy, the suplex dummy for both guys. So I'd be so that at this point now it's a total of 4 hours in the ring, because I worked with an hour with Mike and worked with Darren, and then we would have, if we had matches, it would be after that. So then it'd be part of that. So my favorite things with Darren, we'd go to the beach, especially during the summer. So I remember one time, Ashley Hudson was from Australia.
Right.
And he was a good-looking guy, very athletic. And we were sitting on the beach, and Darren turns to Ashley, and he's like, "Hey, if you say hello or good day to some of these babes, they'll go crazy because they love that accent. We could probably pick up on a lot of babes if you just say a few words." And Ashley was, really cool guy, but kind of quiet,
Right.
Okay. And then we got up and we're walking down the beach, and every group of girls that we passed by, Darren would go, "Hey, he's from Australia." "Hey, he's from Australia." And he's not even saying anything. And I'm giggling like a schoolgirl, like walking on. Shut up. He was great. He was such a great guy. He was just a fun fucking guy. He was easy to hang out with. He always had corny jokes that I loved. He always told some stories. One of my favorite stories that he told was, he was like, I remember, when I was 5 years old, I was in the nativity play, and it was when they turned Mary and Joseph away. And I was like a little kid, and I said, "Well, you can stay in my room, ruining the play." I never got tired of Darren's stuff. He was a pleasure. It was cool to hang out with. He was like a brother. He was a brother.
And one thing about him too was like, if there was tension or if something was about to happen and guys were getting a little too personal with each other, he would just kind of like come into that conversation and like, relax the whole mood and kind of bring a positive twist to everything. It reminds me of the story. There's a video on YouTube about the '92 Olympic Dream Team, and in one of the practices, Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson kind of were going at it because it was basically the surrendering, the passing of the torch, and it got very, very heated and it got personal. And then they got all back in the bus, and everybody was kind of like had chips on their shoulders. And Magic Johnson said something like, "Well, I guess we shouldn't have pissed him off, talking about Michael Jordan." Everyone just kind of like relaxed, started laughing, like, "Yeah, this is fun. This is cool." That's the exact mentality that Darren had in the back when, people were like, maybe their ego got a little too big or they thought their shit didn't stink, or two guys would like be getting a little too personal with each other. And he was that guy. He was that guy, man.
There was a point where, this is when we had a skeleton crew. There was a point. I'm going to tell, give me just 2 more Slammer stories and we'll get into XPW.
Absolutely.
So Vern had long blonde hair for years, and he decided he was going to shave his head. And it was just, it's not worth bleaching, whatever his But of course, being a having a wrestling company, he's like, we're gonna make it part of an angle. So it was me and Vern, I want to say, versus Jeff and Mike, maybe, I can't remember. And Darren was the special referee. And Darren was always a bad guy. He was always a heel.
Right.
It's Lammers. And there were so many things. I can't tell you how grateful again, going back to having the mask, I was grateful to have a mask because they would do shit that cracked me up. And so Vern gets beat and or they pummel him and they start cutting his hair. And Jeff's cutting his hair. And actually, the young lion throughout the Strongbow Stadium days, he's always the baby face. But he was and he actually, I thought he was a great heel because he just had to throw out these remarks that were hilarious. And Darren's like supposedly trying to be a referee. He's like, hey, you better stop that. Oh, you better shut up or whatever Jeff said. And he's cutting his hair. And Darren reaches down, picks up some hair, looks at it, and then throws it. Whee! I'm like, like I'm trying not to crack. I'm like, you guys, we have 10 people here. I don't want to crack up in front of them. But you guys not improvising, doing stuff. He was hilarious. It was so funny. And they would do stuff like that. Him and Mike would do stuff. Mike, movie star Mike, malicious Mike. It was like, they do something in the turnbuckle and they're trying to distract at that point, whatever the match was, Mike was the special referee. And Jeff's like, hey, ref, there's something wrong with the turnbuckle over here, and to distract them. And I'm on the apron being the tag partner as they're attacking my partner. And Mike walks over to the corner and he's like, oh, I don't know. It looks okay to me. It's just the little things they would say. Like, I'm like, you guys, come on. I'm trying to be the straight guy here, not laugh.
That's.
They were great. They were a great bunch of guys. Toro, I'm going to tell you this. So we were going to Strongbow State. Like, it was just kind of monotonous. And we started doing stuff to try to break each other, make each other laugh.
Right.
We try to make Patrick Hernandez laugh. We try to make Danny Ramirez laugh. Like we were like, hey, baby. Like I have a headlock, and I'm like, hey, baby, you're looking pretty good.
Right.
Shut up. Like doing that.
Yeah. So
it kept building. It kept happening. Like we kept doing stuff to needle each other, and finally, like Edgar El Toro Bravo, he started imitating Jerry Lewis. Lady. Yeah. He did it with that I forget what it's called, but where somebody's out on the apron holding onto the top rope, and the other guy pushes the rope and then slingshots him in.
Right. Catapult.
And he goes, "Oh, lady!" and he throws him in. Oh, lady! And finally, Vern's like, "You guys have to knock it off.
Knock it off." Yeah.
And we're like, it was some great times with all of us. With I have to say it was mostly them. Beautiful Bruce Bodine, Ed Ferrara was doing. I mean, it was hilarious. It was just hilarious. It was.
I'll just say this about Ed Ferrara. I mean, I've worked with him way back, and then I didn't really. I worked with Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara when I was working at Big Vision Entertainment. We were doing stuff with the like right when those shoot interviews first started coming out. And I didn't really get to know Vince Russo too well, just a little bit. But I got to tell you, like, as far as both of them go, I could speak more for Ed. But, yeah, they do get a bad rap. And I think in many ways they're just scapegoats for a bad time in wrestling. And one of the biggest things that Ed gets shit on for is impersonating Jim Ross with the Bell's palsy. But, look, WWF, Vince McMahon himself and all the other guys, they did angles. So we should be condemning Ed Ferrara just as much as we should condemn WWE for all the angles they did against Jim Ross. But we don't, because he is.
Listen. Let me say this about and I'm a huge Jim Ross fan.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Jim. I loved him in the UWF. I was excited when it was when it transitioned into the NWA. I thought it was cool, and then the WCW, and when he went to the WWF, and Heenan made some remark about, oh, you're 19, minutes, to the business, and it's like, no, he's been forever. He's been, like, I'm a huge Jim Ross fan. But when Ed did, he was an actor, and I'm not gonna judge or not judge it. It happened, whatever. But you can't tell me when he probably did that impression and people thought it was hilarious.
Right.
And then as soon as somebody criticized that, nobody, it's really? It's the most disgusting thing ever happened in wrestling. Really? That thing is?
I know.
And then nobody gives Ed credit when he was doing the Oklahoma character, when he wrestled.
Right.
He was good.
Yeah.
How often did you see people that were technically not wrestling wrestle and then just suck? Vince McMahon. People are like, oh, I love the Mr. McMahon. Yeah, but then you have to watch him wrestle. I don't want to watch him wrestle. He's terrible. Right. Ed was great. He knew how to wrestle. And nobody, it's like somebody starts a narrative and everybody just follows suit. Oh, we're going to bury those guys. Okay, we're all going to say that's what happened. They ruined. No. You
don't have to like what happened, but at the end of the day, I can't help to say that those guys were a scapegoat for shitty things happening in the wrestling business, specifically WCW at that time. But Carlos,
let's remember all the occupational characters that they came up with and ruined some of the wrestlers' careers.
Oh, completely.
I was a huge Terry Taylor fan. I thought he was a great baby.
Yeah, right. He was
Rooster.
He was very underrated. He has some great 60-minute matches with Ric Flair and the Omni from back in the day, like fantastic, that you never would have known from the Red Rooster days. Absolutely.
He had a great match with the one-man gang at UWF that I thought was like, because honestly, it's not easy to have a great match with a big guy. You have a certain type of match. He pulled it off.
Wow.
Yeah, I could go on and on.
But okay, Carlos, thank you, by the way, for sharing. Those were great D stories. Dynamite D, the late great.
Well, the gang, it was always the gang, and I love Darren, but it was always the gang. But he was always always a comedian. He was always the guy that, like you said, he lightened things up.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many beach trips we took. It was just something I took for granted, and
he was made you feel good. He was a positive energy to have around for sure. Let's talk about now the transition from, you starting out, getting into slammers, but now in Southern California, things are changing. We're starting to see indie shows a little bit, not like today, but a little bit. And then, boom, we have an explosion out here that we hadn't seen since arguably, if you count Herb Abrams' UWF, but arguably since the territory days of prior to the WWE takeover. Which was the formation of XPW. The reason I say we hadn't seen anything like it before, because it was another entity that had the funds to go national. So we were all kind of out here in Southern California. We were doing our thing on the indie scene, and that's where XPW was founded from Rob Black. How did your story, I know we were all together, but your story of breaking into XPW, becoming Carlito Montana, all that, how did that all manifest?
Well, at the time there was a split when the DWO thing happened, and basically you guys were doing the California, what was it?
SCCW.
SCCW. And we just kept, like, at a certain point, Slammers was kind of closed, but shortly thereafter, Vern, Ed, Edgar, El Toro Bravo got together and they decided to kind of reopen Slammers.
Right.
So they wanted me to be the main trainer. And I'm like, well, yeah. I was like, what am I going to, it's like, I felt kind of like I was, because I was working at Target. I wasn't making a fortune, but they were going to bankroll it. And it's like, the least that I should do is train people. I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. And it gave me somewhere to train or whatever. And so that's what was going on with me. I was training guys at the new Slammers. And I was working at Target. and I think I was on a register because I was a supervisor at the time. But at the time when the registers got backed up, they I forget what a code was. And if you were a supervisor, it was all hands on deck on the register. So I was on the register, and I look over, and there's Patrick Hernandez and Oscar, and you know the Samoan kid who I partnered up with and was tag team partners with many times and tag team champions with Slammers. And I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? And they're just they were there waiting for me. I'm like, okay. And I finished up, closed up the registers, walked, hey, what's going on? And they told me about XPW, and Patrick and Oscar were always really generous to me. What I mean by that is they were always kind of like, hey man, you're really good. You should, you need it. We're doing this thing. It's called XPW. You need to be there. You're too good not to be. And they're really putting me over, and it's something that I really deeply appreciate. And looking back, and I didn't know how to thank them. I feel like I owe them a lot because they got me into wrestling to begin with, both of those guys, and now here they are wanting me to go to XPW, and I was like kind of blown away. I was like, wow, it actually motivated me to. But I had to have a conversation with Vern, which was. Vern had to know you don't wrestle for anybody else if you wrestle for me. And I'm like, man, this could be the end of my relationship with Vern when I asked him. But I did. I'm like, you know what? That was really cool. I'd like to try. And I talked to Vern, and Vern was actually super understanding. And I was really shocked. I said, look, I'm still going to train at Slammers. I'll still be here Sundays. I'll still be training the guys. And this isn't me saying goodbye to Slam. It's just I'd like to see what happens with this.
Yeah.
And that's how I showed up to train one time, and I wrestled a few of the guys. I wrestled Darren. I wrestled Jimmy James. And up until that point, I don't want to say there was bad blood between me and Darren. There wasn't. But it was almost like you had a fight with your brother, and you needed to kind of clear the air. And I wanted to clear the air with him. Right. And I just kind of wanted to say my side of, look, man, I understand that there was drama between you and Vern, and I understand it was a two-way street, but there were people like that also got like hit with the shrapnel, and I was one of them. And I love both of you guys, and I just kind of wanted to say that.
Right.
We really didn't talk about it. I hadn't really talked to Darren after that, which really kind of sucked. And there was a few times after, like, even after I stopped wrestling for XPW, that I saw Darren, and I'm like, God damn, I really miss him. It's like, but I'll get back into that when we get further down. But that's what happened, and I started wrestling, like Rob liked me wrestling, and it was funny because. Both times I've it's funny. I remember when they broke off, I tried training at the new place, and I remember having a conversation with Webb, and it was kind of like this rebirth for them. Like they got like their energy back, the love back for wrestling. Right. And Webb said something to me during that time that actually stuck with me because he was right, but I didn't want to buy into it then. And he's like, dude, you got to work on your character. You got to, and he was right. But I was very bullheaded. I wanted to work on my wrestling. I wanted to be a better wrestler, not the character stuff. That's not for, but he was right. And I'll get why that was important, but it did stay with me. And I'm like, years later, I'm like, Webb was right. I needed to really work on my character. But the funny thing with me, as far as my, like Hombre de Oro and Carlitos Montana, I didn't pick those names. I didn't pick those characters. I had totally had something different. When I was Hombre de Oro, before I became Hombre de Oro, when I went into training, there was a wrestling mask in one of the lockers at Slammers. And I said, hey, Vern, would you mind if I wrestled with this mask? I just want to, because Mil Máscaras, El Santo. Oh, yeah, go ahead. So I'm wrestling with the mask, and I just wanted to do it one time. When I was young, I thought I was an okay-looking guy. I didn't want to hide that. So I was wrestling, And all of a sudden, Vern came out of the office into the gym area or the ring area, and he's like, "I got Carlos's new name, Hombre de Oro." And my heart just dropped. I'm like, oh no, because I knew there was no arguing. I was like, oh.
Right.
And a very similar thing happened with Carlito Montana. I was at home and I was like, I'm gonna design a new mask. I'm gonna be the swashbuckler, whatever goofy thing I was thinking. And I was drawing it'll have a little thing in the back. It's gonna be cool because I do some high flying moves. It's gonna be really cool. And I get a call from Kevin Kleinrock. And he goes, "Hey, man, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Hey, yeah, I got an idea for a new mask." He goes, "Yeah, about that. Rob doesn't want you to wear a mask." I'm like, "What?" My heart dropped because I knew there probably wasn't any arguing about it. Yeah, he thinks you're too good looking. He thinks you kind of look like Al Pacino and Robert De Niro all rolled up into one. He wants you to be Carlito Montana. And I'm like, oh. Both times I was like not happy with the new character. I was like, oh man.
So you didn't want a mask, you got a mask. You didn't want to be unmasked, and vice versa. Interesting.
Right. Yeah.
So Carlito Montana. So that was one of the first guys, fresh out the gate, XPW, right at the very beginning, the first show, all that.
I don't think it was the first show. I think it might have been the second show.
But you were there, though. You were there in the beginning.
Yes, sort of. Not right in the beginning.
Okay.
I'm almost certain there was a show before mine.
All right. So I didn't know that. I thought you were there, part of it, maybe just not utilized on the first show. But okay. But nonetheless, you were there right at the beginning. Yep. Before television, because in July '99 was the first show, but April of 2000 was the birth of XPW TV. So there was a little in between time right there. A lot of guys that weren't there yet.
Well, I remember. Can I ask you a question? There was a couple of guys that I'd like to mention. One, I never met him, but I was in an independent show with him one time, Tech 9.
Yeah,
and I knew he was at the very first show because there was a lot of buzz around him. And,
Christian Blood.
Huh?
Christian Blood.
And the other one, Bill Judd.
Yeah.
May I ask why Bill Judd never wrestled for XPW?
I can't confirm exactly why, and there's been so many conflicting stories throughout the years, so I don't know. But if anybody out there remembers that, feel free to drop that in the comment, or even if you even.
Let me tell you, I remember Bill Judd wrestling the very first time at Slammers, and he was really green. And I went away and I came back, and he did something. Looking back, I thought was genius. I believe he started going to like some improv or groundlings. I'm not sure which one. I don't want to say it was the groundlings or Second City or anything like that. But he did that, and he started working on that whole character. And I just want to say how innovative that was. Yeah, I wish I did that then. Because it was like you need.
I mean, I did that. I did the groundlings, and I. When you go walk in there, what do you do? What do you do? I'm an actor. I'm in the pro wrestling. Everyone, what? Pro wrestling? And so it was kind of cool to explain to them what kind of help you need, because you're explaining the wrestling business and they're explaining the improv to you. It was very, very cool experience.
I went to the groundlings, but it was way after the fact. And I wish I did it when I was 20. Right. And I thought it was really innovative of Bill to do that. Yeah. And he was a different wrestler. Not only was he better technically as a wrestler, but he was hilarious. He'd come up with these bits. I want to pay a little homage because I thought it was really cool because he would change where he was from. He was from Tornado Alley, Bill Judd, from Valley of the Gods. I thought they were genius. And he was funny. He was funny that way. I just
as Carlito in XPW, Carlito Montana, of course, taken from, like you said, Al Pacino, Scarface, Tony Montana, right? And one of the great movie characters of all time, and gangster movies for sure. And that was your character, Carlitos Montana, and you were, to me, very believable as that character. You came out, you played a Cuban guy, right? to the point where you actually got heat at the sports arena when you brought the whole race into it, and you got a lot of heat, man.
Which time? Which is that?
You were feuding with the West Siders, and you dropped.
No. Okay, this is funny, and talk about like not expecting. So the plan was the West Siders were gonna wrestle against Mexico's Most Wanted,
right?
And I was gonna team up with the West Siders. And, it was all very like I got there and I found out that was happening, but they didn't want me to walk out with the West Siders. I'm like, okay.
Right.
And let me just say, I love both of those guys. Those guys were incredible.
Yeah.
I thought they were.
Just a shout out to the late great Q, man. We miss him. You know, yeah, absolutely. He was awesome.
Both guys are very
guys.
good.
John, both of them chronic, but you know, of course, he passed Q, so we want to give a shout out. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely.
So I was at the curtain ready to come out, and I'm nervous. I'm ready. I'm like, okay, getting in that headset. I'm like, okay, all right, here we go. And then before I could react, before I could say anything, Rob yells at me though. All right, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna walk out and you're gonna say you hate the N-word. And I'm say you hate the N-word, but you hate Mexicans worse or wetbacks, or whatever he said. I'm like, huh? Go. I'm like, huh? And I got a cigar. Now I've got to, and I've seen that match because somebody posted it. Thank you for whoever posted it on Facebook, because I don't have any of that stuff. But I walk out and I said, everybody knows I hate, and I think I was so like, no, I said it, but I don't even hear me say it.
Right.
Once I said it, I've never seen so many black dudes come out of the and I'm like, wow, that worked. Hopefully I make it to the ring, and then I get into the ring, and Rey Mysterio Sr. Man, what a cool guy.
Really quick, I just want to touch on that part. I found it very interesting, the dynamic, because when you said that, the N-word got a lot of heat. And then you said, but what I hate worse are
God damn it. Wetback. But
the thing is, but really quick, and I remember this too, is I felt like the Hispanic fans that were kind of behind you because you were Hispanic. And then they were even more pissed than the black fans because they were already behind you. And then you basically turned on them. But no, man, I'm not Mexican. I'm Cuban. And then that you were so believable with that because it
arrogance.
It took everybody off guard. And then, but you, like I said, you just sold it, and you were so serious about it, and the disgusting look on your face, like I gotta be in front of you, disgusting people. Like, it's just great heel stuff, great heat.
Well, I like to take credit for it, but the honest to God truth is, I just wanted to get through it.
I understand that, but while you were out there and you were doing it, I don't think it was cheap heat, because it was. When you say race and stuff, it could be defined as cheap heat. But that was needed to get your character as Carlito, the Cuban Al Pacino guy, over, and I'm better than all you other people.
Right.
I thought it was awesome.
Well, thank you. But again, then we had I think a decent match. I don't think it was a great match, but I think it was a decent match. And I'm not criticizing the other guys. I think we never wrestled before. It was a lot of news. It's like I wasn't used to wrestling luchadores, wrestling with the West Siders. I honestly thought was cool. Like, I actually thought, man, that could have had legs. We should have had more matches together, because I think we worked really well together.
I want to get into some of your favorite matches, but before that, speaking of your character, Carlito Montana, like Tony Montana, right? In Scarface, Al Pacino. I remember when the genesis of XPW, when we were just figuring out who's going to be who, how it's going to all play out. And I remember when you were shooting your promos and you had the some extreme girls around you at the chairs and all that. And I remember some of the other guys were like, man, you got the best gimmick. You're like a mom boss. You got women around you. You have the best. How did you get the best gimmick? I mean, it was just funny times, dude. And it was just like kids. We're all like kids. Yeah. And but okay, getting back to what you were saying, you shared with us a little bit of Rob Black, but before I want to get to him, do you have any favorite opponent in XPW or favorite matches or angles that you weren't necessarily involved in XPW? But what are your favorite match of yourself in XPW?
Well, I'll tell you who some of my favorite guys were, and I wish I had more matches with.
Right.
Joey. I thought you guys. Joey and I, for a short while, right, we would have what he would call dark match.
You're talking about Chaos, just for everybody knows Chaos.
Chaos.
Yeah.
And so we'd get there early, we kind of warm up, and then Chaos and I would have improv matches, and it wasn't for anybody. It was just for us. It was a couple of the guys, the ring crew guys, and us, and we'd have just improv matches. And we had I think one match on a show, and all those matches we just kind of did off the cuff were way better than the match we had on the show, which was like, to me, I was like, oh man, I wish we could have done that for the crowd. Phil, I thought phenomenal Phil. I would have liked to have like a long program with Phil. Yeah. I thought he was a very talented guys. The West Siders, I said before, I thought those guys, man, I was impressed with all the guys that came out of Slammers wrestled regularly, so they kind of sharpened their tools. Right. And guys like Lester and Chaos and the West Siders and Phil and these guys, I was impressed with how well they were. I thought they had the character down. I thought they were wrestling well. Some of the guys from Slammers had really, in my eyes, really improved. Webb, Jimmy. Oh my God, Jimmy, homeless Jimmy. Yeah. He was really good. It's like I was like, wow, these guys brought it to a different level. I can't tell you. It felt a little scattered as far as following like any angles. But after I was gone, I loved what Angel was doing. Right. I thought he we trained in a very specific way, and I thought he really showed that and was like super believable. I was very proud of Darren when I saw him wrestle with Juventud and Billy. I thought he did a lot of great stuff, and it was really cool watching a lot of these guys that you kind of grew up with. You
got any good memories of Lester, of Supreme? Talked about Dynamite D.
Yeah, I do. I got a funny one. So this is after I'd been gone, and I had stopped wrestling for XPW. And I honestly, when I stopped, I probably should have. I wish I stayed at least another year just to get work more. But regardless, I had gone, and they had a get together, and I'm like, oh, I want to. I think I talked to John or Angel, because I still communicate with Angel regularly, or try to, anyways. Yeah. And I wish I could communicate with all those guys, but. So he's like, yeah, we're getting together at I don't know if it was Lester's house or Joey's house. I don't remember. But I'm like, he gave me the address. So I went down there just to see the guys. And at this point, I put on some weight. And Lester walks in. And I'm like, hey, what's up, Supreme? And he's looking at me like, I don't know who you are. And I was embarrassed. I was like, I was just Carlito Montana. I'm just gonna go. So then he's I remember, okay. And then he starts grilling me, and they pop in a DVD, and it was like this video they were gonna put together, and I looked really cut in it. Like I had gotten in really good shape, and I'd gotten in and out of shape, but I was really good shape. And he's like, "What happened to you?" And I'm, life? I don't know. But he was great, and I thought, man, I that was the other guy. There was a Chaos and Supreme, man. They had really great. Supreme had great timing,
Yeah.
He was just fearless.
Yeah. Fearless.
And
A beast.
a really great dad.
Yeah.
I just admired him because his son was like.
Don't know that. A lot of people don't know that, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I admired that. I really admired watching him with his son in the ring. It was so sweet, you know. And you're an older person, you know. I have a daughter. I have a 15-year-old daughter. You admire that a lot. I did.
Oh, yeah.
That's really. Now I didn't know my father growing up, so it's especially tugs at my heartstrings when I see a really good father.
Oh yeah,
it's really cool.
Absolutely, man. So let me ask you, Carlos. You talked a little bit about the end of your tenure, but before doing that, and you also talked a little bit about Rob Black, that moment at the LA Sports Arena before you went out to the ring at the gorilla position.
May I give credit to a couple people?
Please do.
So I talk about Patrick Hernandez. He basically got me in. Him and Oscar got me into Slammers, and they got me into XPW. There was a point when Shane Douglas came in early on.
Right, the Hollywood Palace.
And you know, dude, this is like my world. My wrestling world was really small. So to see somebody who was a hero of mine, my personal hero, Shane Douglas was a hero of mine. It was kind of like, oh my God, there's Shane Douglas. I was starstruck.
Yeah.
And I was in the back, and Patrick pulls his head in, and he's like, "Hey, Carlos, come over here." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm walking with him. He goes, "They want you in the ring." I'm like, "Okay." And he confided in me. I don't know if it's true or not, or he was making me feel good about myself or not, but it was really cool. Regardless, he said that, you know, we had that loop of all the wrestlers wrestling, the clips of all the wrestlers, and there was a clip of mine up there, I guess, with me in different little wrestling scenarios. And apparently, his words were, Shane Douglas saw that clip and was like, "That guy's good. Give me that guy. Bring me that guy. That guy's good. Who trained that guy?" And Patrick, I didn't know this, but Patrick told me. I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." You know, because you work hard at something, but you don't know if it's, you know how people's take it. And for Patrick to share that with me, I thought I'm still grateful to that, because it gave me a boost. And the other one was Lazy. He just was always, "Hey man, you're good." You know, he'd say stuff that he didn't have to say. And when we wrestled, I think the Los Angeles Forum? Was it the Forum that we wrestled at?
The LA Sports Arena.
LA Sports Arena. And he starts telling me the first time he played it, I forget what arena he played. And I'm just like, "Oh." He goes, "Yeah, dude, you know, you're going to do good." And he was like directing me. I kind of feel like I let some people down when I quit, because I'm like, they believed in me more than I had the desire to continue.
What was the ultimate reason for the end of your XPW tenure?
A couple. There's a few. One of the big ones, and another person I want to give credit, and somebody that rest his soul, Tracy Smothers. When they brought in Tracy Smothers, I thought this was really cool. Tracy Smothers started working, and I'm sure they told him to, but he didn't have to do this. He started working with all of us.
Right.
And he started getting us in the ring, and he goes, "All right, guys, let's warm up. Stretching." And he's having a stretch. He goes, "Stretching is the key to longevity." That was his big motto. It was like,
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it was cool. It was cool that somebody that you admire is taking the time to work with you. And Shane Douglas did the same thing a little bit with us, but I thought that was really cool that he did that. And Chris Candido was wrestling there at the time, and he was just built. Chris Candido was like my height, but his shoulders were like massive.
Yeah.
And I finally kind of pulled Tracy aside one day, and I go, "Hey, Tracy, man, no, honestly, what do you think? What do you think I need to do to get to the next level?" And he's like, "What did he say?" He goes, "Honestly, man, you're pretty good. You're pretty good. But have you ever thought of growth hormones?" And this is after he's talking about longevity, and I'm like, "Yeah, Tracy, but isn't that stuff really bad for you?" Tracy's like, Yeah, man, that's some bad shit. That's some really bad shit. And at that point, I'd been pretty regimented. I was eating healthy. I dropped like fat, and I was in pretty great shape. But putting on muscle is a whole different animal. And I'm like, I don't, I'm 28 or 29 at the time. I'm like,
okay,
I don't know if I want to sacrifice anymore.
Right.
I had some nagging little injuries. I've had knee surgery. I'd had concussions. I had enough things where I'm like, and it's the damnedest thing when you're following your dream and you're kind of there. And I'll tell you the story. I have to tell you this story because literally this was like, am I gonna keep doing this? I wrestled Damian Steele. And artistically, it was very hard for me because at Slammers, I was still training wrestlers, and I kind of called the shots. Vern wasn't even showing up, really. I was training the guys, and it was my project, basically. And but here, I didn't know. Stupid. I was so stupid. Honestly, it was stupid because Rob really was kind of pushing me a little bit, and I was so stupid to see it. And I could have had to really build a relationship with that and made more of a run with it. But anyways, I had a match with Damian, and Damian, I'm going to criticize him a little bit, and I don't mean to. Look, we were just in different places. He had a great look.
Yeah, you're talking Damian Steele, of course.
Damian Steele. He had grown out his hair. He had beautiful long blonde hair and a great body.
He looked like a professional, the definition of a pro wrestler. Absolutely.
And he was the champion. And he had wrestled, like they had brought in Big Dick to wrestle him, Big Dick Dudley. They had brought in Chris Candido.
Right.
And I think he had an idea of what he wanted to look like as he wrestled. But like, I think he just needed, for me, he needed more seasoning. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
So, as I told you earlier, I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about showing the strings if you're wrestling. Like people saying it's fake, and I'm like, it's not going to be fake with me, kind of thing. So I wrestled Damian, and I wasn't taking liberties, but I was snug. I was a bit snug, and the match was over, and I didn't think anything of it. And I walked to the back, and Rob gave me a big hug, and I'm like, I just thought he was happy for the overall card. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And Damian Steele gets back there, and he starts kind of letting me have it. Bro, you can't do that. You can't be that stiff. What are you doing? This isn't Slammers. And I didn't want to fight him or anything like that, but I did have like, I don't need this. I don't, fuck it. I wasn't, I wasn't very ambitious, but I was like, fuck it, whatever. You know what? Maybe I'm going to quit. I don't need this shit. Wow. So later on that week, I went to go pick up my check, and I went over to the office, and Damian Steele worked in the office.
Yeah.
He sees me, and he makes like a beeline to me, and I was kind of still sore. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit of a bitch myself, So I was like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. And he kept following me. He said, hey, bro, I want to say I'm sorry. I think it's okay. No, and he keeps trying to I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's like you got your way of wanting to work. I get it. It's like, no. And he finally pulls me aside, and he's like, bro, I don't know. Rob said that was the best match he's ever seen me have, and that he thought that we looked like a couple WWFers and this and that. And I'm like, oh. Now the thing was, he was doing little things to me that kind of exposed the match when we were wrestling. That was it. I just was being a little stiff, like, don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was like hammering. I wasn't, but he felt stiff. But I thought it got a decent match out of him. And that to me was always the most important thing. Let's make the match good. It wasn't about me putting myself over. It was about making it feel legit.
Real. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he keeps following me, and I got my check, and I'm walking to the, outside part, and I'm like, dude, he's still following me. What's going on? And now Rob's out there, and somebody else is out there. I think Webb might've been out there. And I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? And I used to have a Camaro. And Rob's like, that's a real fucking cool car, man. And I'm like, oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, man. That was a real fucking good match. You know, you guys look like fucking WWFers out there. And I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, why don't you come down to the house this weekend? We're having a barbecue and some steaks. Just come down. And I wish I did, because he was being really generous.
Yeah.
He didn't. But I thought it was cool. It's like, okay, it's like, wow. Shortly thereafter, I get a call from Damian Steele again. Hey, bro, what's up, man? What are you up to? I'm just hanging out. I'm off today. Hey, WCW's in town. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. He goes, hey, would Ed's gonna be there. I'm like, oh, that fuck Ed, man. I haven't talked to Ed in a long time.
Ed Ferrara.
Yeah. And he goes, dude, let's just go. It's like I want to kind of get a break and see, And I'm like, oh, dude, just go. You don't need me. Ed. No, dude, you guys were tight. I was friendly with him, but you guys were tight. And I'm like, okay, fine. I in my head, I'm like, we're not going to get backstage. Fine, So we drive there, and again, I gotta say, he looked great. Dynamite Steele looked like a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
Pulls up to the security guard. He looks at us and waves us in. And I'm like, oh, security breach. And we park in, we walk in, and we walk into the commissary. I'm looking at people. Oh, my God. And God bless his soul, Jimmy Hart runs up to us and goes, hey, guys, what's going on? Can I help you with something? Yeah. I'm looking for my friend, Ed Ferrara. Oh, I'll get you, Ed. And he gets it, and I see it, and we fucking hug, and it's wonderful. And
wow.
We met with him for a little bit, and he's just telling us about, we see all these wrestlers. We're like, fuck, there's Conan, there's Rey Mysterio Jr., and he's telling us about all the politics going on. And, it's like, I think Vince Russo at that time had left, and he was like, dude, I'm just being an agent right now. And
this is right around the year 2000.
Yes. No, okay. This is 2000. So anyways, Damien brought like a package, like a videotape in a 8x10, gives it to Ed, and I'll put it to the right people. And that was it. It was cool. It was like, fuck, it was really cool to see him. The next XPW show, I'm sitting there chatting with somebody, and Mike Modest comes up to me, and I'd wrestled Mike Modest, and it was one of those things. He was a Northern California guy, and I didn't really know him well, and I didn't know how people liked me or not. So I was always kind of I wasn't trying to be standoffish. I just didn't know. I didn't know locker room etiquette. So, but I liked Mike. I thought Mike was really cool. I thought he was actually we actually shared a lot of interests, like movies and stuff, horror movies. And he goes, hey, Carlitos, I got to talk to you, man. Hey, I got somebody on the phone that needs to talk to you. And it was Ed. And he goes, hey, brother. Oh, my God, hey, what's going on? I'm super excited. He goes, hey, listen, I don't have a lot of time. Listen, I need a videotape of you and give me maybe a headshot, and I'll get you in. After 10 years of busting my ass, I actually have an opportunity, a possible opportunity to wrestle for WCW. One of the, I don't care if it was going down. I didn't know. I was still.
No one knew. Yeah, no one knew.
And I'm like, oh my God, I got a chance to actually get in. But that's right around the time I had that conversation with Tracy Smothers, and it was a reality check. And the reality was, how much more do I want to sacrifice?
Wow.
And the answer was, I didn't want to sacrifice anymore.
Wow.
And it was, even talking about it, I was like, wow. It's like, that's all I wanted since I was 13 years old. And now I actually have an opportunity. And I still text with Ed. I love Ed Ferrara. Yeah. He's the best man in my way. I love that guy. Love him. When he left to go write for the WWF, I felt this weird thing, and I didn't know what it was. And it took me a couple of weeks, and I finally had to call him, and I realized, oh my God, I'm going to miss him. I love this guy. And it was like, I've never had that experience with like a friend, like a dude where it's not a breakup, but he's leaving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I really feel sad.
Yeah.
But anyways, there he was telling me, dude, I can get you in. And it was a big, like, I still don't know if I made the right decision, to be honest with you, Kris, because I still love wrestling. I don't watch it anymore, but I watch old stuff on YouTube and like stuff that I grew up with. I have a different like outlook on it, or the different decades or whatever, but I still enjoy it. I think about what I might like. Sometimes maybe I want to write something. I don't know if I'm smart enough to write something, but I definitely have stories I'd like to share. The Slammer stories, the XPW stories, those are wonderful stories. I think that what you're doing is really cool because it was a special time in our lives, and it's worth revisiting for sure. For me, I don't know how many people watch this. I don't know. I doubt there's a lot of Carlito fans, but for me, I was definitely a fan of a lot of the guys, and I think a lot of them are special. I think we're brothers, and
absolutely,
man. But to answer the question, I realized I did not want to sacrifice any more of my life, because at that point, every time, one of the basic, when I used to teach, so full of shit, I used to make the guys grapple with me for like 5 weeks. If they really want it. But to be honest with you, it was most surprising throughout that time. This is the latter part of Slammers, right before it closed up. I would, week 6, if they showed up, I'm like, if they show up week 6, I'm going to teach them. And the first thing I taught them was just the basic bump. More people quit after the basic bump than any of my bullshit grappling.
Yes.
And I was like, what? He's gone? And I'm like, what happened? I just showed him how to take a bump. Well, we're starting. We're starting. And then, and it was a couple of guys that said, there was a guy, I forget his name, young guy. Because my regular students, at that point, were John Chavez, Angel, Gabriel, Fantastico, Tony Mongol, and there was a guy that was in the Army Reserve, Hyman, and I forget his last name. Forgive me, but they were my core guys, and and it was more grappling based. But we get new guys, and then, like I said, that week 5, and some of these guys would tell me, I got to tell you, I almost quit after the first bump. And I'm like, why? Dude, I felt like I got hit by a car.
Yeah.
I'd been bumping now for 10 years, so I didn't get it. And I'm like, really? And it was just like, huh. And I just thought, well, I'm kind of ridiculous. I thought I was, I was going to put them through the ringer with some grappling. And, if they really, and it's like, no, it's all BS. If you teach the guy on day 1 how to bump, most likely they won't come back if they really don't want to come back. Right. It's like, I don't know why I was doing that. Actually, the grappling came in really good because it showed them my big pet peeve with wrestling, and why I made it more, why that grappling was so important to me was, especially in the 90s, like let's just say you're wrestling, right? It's the lockup into a headlock, into a top wrist lock, into a hammer lock, into a reversal. And what started happening was guys knew the routine so well that look, I do jiu-jitsu now. I've done Brazilian jiu-jitsu for 15 years now. Each of those moves are serious, like, moves. Like if you get me in a hammer lock and I don't block it, you're gonna break my arm. It's a real it's a real move, but guys have gotten used to doing this chain wrestling that it becomes meaningless. And it wasn't our guys. It was prevalent at that point in 80s and 90s pro wrestling, where when it was do. It was almost like, what do you remember? What do you remember? What do you remember? And it was like, so anyways. But that's why I decided those 2 things happened with Tracy Smothers, God rest his soul, and Ed telling me that he could get me in WCW.
Wow, I never knew that, and man, thanks for sharing, because that's quite the monumental moment right there with again, a connection that we all had, and somebody that multiple people right there seeing your talent. And it doesn't surprise me at all, because like I said, I know you joked about how many Carlitos fans are there, but I tell you, man, the guys that I've already had on the show that know the history, the lineage here in Southern California, where all this kind of started from with XPW. I mean, your name is right there with Dynamite D, with all the innovators that kind of kicked this off. So I can't tell you how happy I am to have you share these stories. And hey, man, if you can tell the story, if you can write a story half as good as you can tell one, then yes, man, you can be a good writer, because I appreciate these stories, man. But yeah, Carlos, no, man, integral part of the company from its inception, Carlito Montana. And I'm going to try to get some good pictures of that era to kind of flash in between our conversation here. And before we kind of wrap up, can you give me your thoughts on, as a fan, as some guy who, one, worked in XPW, but also as a fan, on what you think the legacy of XPW will be in the great scheme of professional wrestling?
I think, unfortunately, I think people really go to the lowest common denominator and always kind of dismiss it sometimes as an ECW ripoff. And we were definitely, I think it was definitely based off of ECW. I was a fan of ECW.
Yeah,
I was a huge fan. I thought it was great. I thought the way they produced that show was great and exciting. It was very different from what we were getting with WWF and WCW at the time. It was exciting, wonderfully edited. But I think when it comes down to it, it was, I think the legacy, it really, all these guys that were working in California and the West Coast, they finally got to be showcased a bit. And it was it was cool. I think that's probably the unsaid thing, guys like Darren, guys like Chaos, Supreme. It was cool to watch these guys go. John Chavez, Angel. I mean, I could go on and on. For me, it was really cool to work with some of these guys, meet these guys, be in the same company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the real legacy that these guys look. When we were wrestling at Slammers, and even when Slammers broke off. See, I thought it was still. I told Darren. We had a conversation, and he told me about, it's gonna, the DWO thing and the And I was like a good brother. I said, hey, I think it's a terrible idea. I didn't know what he was going to do. That he was going to try to run his own company. But had he told me that, I would have said it was a terrible idea, because there was a certain point where you felt like we were wrestling in the forest. Does anybody, if you wrestle in the forest, did you really wrestle? That's how I felt. All right. And that's like, dude, you're too talented. Go to fucking Mexico. The big mistake, looking back for me, the big mistake all of us did, not take, I think we could have, put some things into heavy gear like training and weight training, and putting on muscle, but try to go to Mexico. That was our easiest thing. Maybe, like save money, spend a couple of months over there, try to break into a company. And if you do, then you try to break into Japan and so forth. Like when I listen to podcasts like from Chris Jericho or Conan, or when you hear what they were doing, you're like, I really missed the boat. The cool thing with XPW, you got to meet some people. I got to shake hands with Bruce Hart, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I remember when he was back at the LA Sports Arena, and that's when XPW was really kind of beginning. We just got launched on television. Terry Funk came in, Abdul the Butcher, Sabu, and so Bruce Hart. A lot of people don't realize how many people were maybe not showcased on XPW TV or in the arena that would come to these shows. Like you said, Bruce Hart, and there were a few others throughout that tenure. Yep. Just kind of were curious, like, what is this XPW thing?
With Bruce Hart, it was really cool because I was a huge Bret Hart fan. I was a huge Hart family fan, and I saw him like, oh shit, that's Bruce Hart. And I just finished the match, And I go up, and he's looking at me not like, oh, a fan. He's looking at me, oh, a worker. And I'm shaking his hand. It was a pleasure to meet you. And he's like, it's a recognition, and it's cool.
It was crazy. It was crazy, actually, before, but no, sharing that. But just to interject, like, I remember meeting him too, thinking the same exact thing. And he was like, oh, hey, what's up, Kris? How the hell do you know me? But he was watching the TV show. It's like, wow, this is, it was cool, you know?
Part of me was like, hey, if you ever need a worker, I'd like to go to Calgary. It's one of those things like, I wish that had happened for us maybe 5 years prior.
Right.
And I would have tried to make something, but I wish because then I would have been more ballsy, like, oh, people think I'm decent. I can go wrestling, because I honestly think the mistake with us, with only wrestling where we wrestle, like in California or for Slammers, and then, if we're wrestling the same guys, I think we would have grown as wrestlers if we went to different places.
Right.
That's nobody, I didn't know that then, but now I'm like, man, that was the thing to do, and it would have been cool. And to get, like I said, to get recognition from like somebody like Bruce Hart from the famous Hart family, it was cool. It was super cool.
A lot of guys, came through that locker room, big names in the business, and boy, thanks for reminding me about that, because that was a good night hanging out with him, Bruce Hart, and everybody was picking his brain, and it was just a lot of historic times, actually, looking back, kind of like a part of wrestling history, all the stuff that went on, not only out in the arena, the LA Sports Arena, but everything backstage and all the stuff that happened. So really enjoy doing this show for that purpose, to share these moments and kind of reminding ourselves about this stuff that happened. Yourself and other guests just kind of bouncing off each other. Oh yeah, that's right. We did this, that happened. And also, thank you, by the way, Carlos. Is really great getting back in touch with you. I really enjoy your great disposition as far as a guest, and you got a great energy to you, just like Dynamite D did. But we this show is really just like you said. People go to that lowest common denominator with, let's say, XPW, and some things you have every right to think that, but to show the human side of XPW and who we really were, not this monstrous league with these monstrous people. Like, this is the human side, man, of that company, and it's a joy to be able to share that with people like yourself, man.
Well, I took great pride in being part of some of the guys' training and development. Like Billy and Webb and Jimmy. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I was responsible for your friend and mine, Monchichi's refereeing career.
Awesome, man.
We had lost a referee at Slammers, and we had I don't remember when this was exactly. There was the great Dan Farron. God, he's still around. He's a good guy, but he'd been a referee for a while. But he had a falling out with Vern. I don't know why. And Vern's like, well, we're gonna need a referee. We need somebody. We were all me, Darren. Some of us were only like 5'10", 5'9" and 3/4 for me. I never even got to 10, and so we need somebody smaller than that. And I'm like, all right. I know somebody.
Yeah, man.
And Danny Ramirez,
he's right down here somewhere. I know.
Well, Danny Ramirez, he's a little guy, but he's got a big personality.
Oh yeah.
He's gonna love this. I got somebody, and it was Danny Ramirez, and I'm like, dude, do you want to be a referee for Slammers? And he jumped at it. It was really cool because he's like, I don't know. But he totally took to it, and I think he loved wrestling. He loves wrestling now. I think. Yeah.
And now
I feel bad because I got him hooked on the crack.
That's right. But what's cool now is actually him and I kind of reconnected, and we're doing stuff where he's doing some announcing, and which, like you said, people need to get to know him. Unfortunately, with referees, you don't put your personality out there. So he's going in a different direction now. He's already kind of cemented himself and put his name out there for being a ref. So now, and I think this fits him so much better as far as being an announcer. He could show his, like you say, we both know that guy, and he's like, wherever he walks around, he's the freaking mayor. You know, like everyone.
He's what? How tall is he? He's like.
Oh, I'm sure he's at
5'8".
I'm sure he's at least 4'3".
He's a wee little guy. But the funny thing is, his person, dude. When anywhere he was such a big personality. He's always like, and he's funny. He's really funny, right. And he's a lovable guy. He's a sweet guy.
He brings people together, and we want to bring him on this show. You're not going to believe this, dude. Right when we're talking about him, he's literally calling me up right now.
His ears got hot.
And wait. Here we go. Danny Ramirez, you are live right now on Wrestling Chatter with Carlito Montana. Say hello.
Hello, Carlito Montana. How are you, my friend? Everything's okay. I love you. I miss you. And I wish you were back to wrestling as the old character that we can't mention because, that's a secret.
So wait, Danny, I got to ask you, when are you coming on Xtreme Memories?
I thought I was on there already. I mean, I should have been number 4 or 5 on the top list, so I figured, they don't need me no more, but I don't know.
No, the fans are demanding you, Danny. So, well, hey, I gotta.
Hey, ask him if that was a Cuban accent because it sounded more like Cheech from Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, you're sounding more and more like Cheech and Chong now, man. Cheech Marin.
That was my Saudi Arabia accent.
Oh my gosh. Well, hey, you just called in right when we were literally talking about you on the show, and unbelievable. That's the stars are lined up. The stars are lined up in one way or the other right now. But we got to sign off, and we got you on the phone to sign off. Maybe you can say goodbye to Carlito and the fans as well, Danny. Go for it.
Well, can I say a quick story?
A quick story? Go ahead.
Yeah. Did Carlos tell you how we met?
Yeah, well, we got at Target, right?
Yeah, the Christmas trees.
Yes, we talked about that in the beginning. That's right.
That's not a very interesting story, Danny.
Yeah, he said it's not interesting. He got much more exciting things he talked about.
I'm trying to keep it PG, but okay, I'll let you guys go. Carlos, I love you, bro.
I love you too, buddy.
Kris, I love you too, buddy. And,
love you too, and we're gonna get you back on, not just the cell phone, but we're gonna get you on the show too very soon.
Okay, I need my Scooby snacks.
We'll give you your Scooby snacks. Don't worry. I thought. Wait a minute. I thought you were the one with Scrappy Snacks, the little guy. Oh, we'll talk about that later. Okay. All right, buddy. Love you too, buddy. Take care.
I don't know if you know this. Napoleon had a Danny complex.
Hey, on that note, my name is Kris Kloss. Our guest was the one and only Carlito Montana and Danny Ramirez. I don't know how that happened, but nonetheless, thank you guys for joining us. We're here on the 15th and 30th. I'm going to save that. Let's let Christy Olsen explain that to you. The lovely Christy Olsen.
Thank you for watching Xtreme Memories, hosted by Kris Kloss. He's dropping new episodes every month on the 15th and 30th. You can be the first to tune in by subscribing to the Wrestling Chatter channel right here on YouTube. See you next time.